Hello, everybody. Kelsey Komorowski here, founder of Como. Welcome. Tonight we have a very special interview with Laurie. She has very graciously agreed to come on and share her story. Laurie is an incredible, incredible mom. And I feel like I was literally just saying before we hit record, this conversation has been a long time coming. We went through the holidays. Laurie and her family went through like a cross-country move that is still kind of underway. She's sitting in her brand new office calling in tonight. Laurie, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And we'll go ahead and just dive in. If you can give us a little bit of background, tell us about Nicole, tell us about the last couple of years of her experience in school, kind of set the situation for us.
All right. So Nicole is a student who all the way through her elementary school and middle school, all the way up into, I would say, her freshman year in high school, she was the student that never had problems with grades or no challenges at all academically, pretty normal, A, B student, no challenges at all. And in her sophomore year, she decided that she wanted to take an honors Spanish class and also another class, which was instead of taking the regular English class, she took a journalism class. And both of those classes were a little bit different in the way that they were taught in their own unique ways. So the journalism class was a little less structured. She was given a beat and she had a deadline to submit articles at, periodically every couple of weeks that had to be submitted to the editor. She was, actually published going to be published in a newspaper, but there wasn't really, it wasn't like a traditional assignment where, the teacher said, this is what you have to write about, this is what you have to do. This was something she had to come up on her own. She had to figure out what the process was for creating this article and submitting it at the deadline. And she could do it any time in the 3 or 4 week period that she had assigned to it. And she had a few articles due each semester. So that was a bit of a challenge for her. She always seemed to be scrambling to get that done and to balance that with her other work. And along with that, she was also taking an honors Spanish class. And it was very highly accelerated. She had always had a very easy time with Spanish, and all of a sudden she was struggling with Spanish. And the teacher was a teacher that was not very forgiving, not very encouraging. Nicole, for the first time in her life, I think, felt like she wasn't at the top of the class and that maybe she couldn't get through. And there was a lot of work. There was a lot of tedious verb conjugations that she had to manually write in a notebook every night. And it was just hours and hours of very old school teaching method for learning language. And it was painful for her. And she wasn't doing as well as she wanted to, I think. And alongside with that, she also became very active in all kinds of extracurricular activities, which was fantastic. The world was opening up to her with theater and choir and voice lessons and dance. And these things were consuming a lot of her time. So what I just described, is probably, the perfect storm for, an adolescent to start to have some difficulties in achievement in school. And that's kind of where. And then on top of that, right around that same time, I saw her start to struggle with those specific course areas. And then on top of that, all of a sudden we had COVID, and the public school system where we were sort of shut down. They weren't prepared for anything like this. The remote learning experience was not just, she just completely shut down at that point. And we went to, in our district, we were on a pass-fail grade system for her last semester, which made it even worse. Nicole just decided that she wasn't going to do anything except the bare minimum for 3 months. And that's what she did. And she passed all of her classes, but we realized that we had to do something different at that point. That wasn't the kind of learning experience we wanted her to be having. So that's really where we started to make some changes in her educational process. It was all to the crash, if you will, for Nicole at that point, I think was perfectly understandable, because all of the things that she loved stopped. All of the good, the extracurricular activities that she was involved in came to a complete halt. She was completely isolated from her friends. She was stuck at home with us. There was a lot of anger, frustration, along with like all the normal stuff that kids deal with at age 15 and a half or 16. She had all these other things that made it feel even darker and worse to her, and made it even more difficult for her to kind of dig herself out of the hole, ask for help. She just went to her room and shut the door and didn't want to talk to anybody. So we convinced her at that point to switch over to a different program at an online high school for the coming school year, which was an established, the reason we chose that program was because it was an established program that had been running for many years. It was run out of George Washington University High School is the name of the program that we chose. The teachers, had been around for about 10 years. They had been teaching kids online. So we felt that if she was going to be online, we wanted her to be in a program that had this, with an organization that knew what it was doing in terms of teaching kids online. So that's kind of the background. There were definitely some challenges still when we got to that point. Transitioning over to being online was quite a challenge for her, because it still was very unstructured. Gave her a lot more freedom in terms of deadlines to get things done. But she had to review the whole curriculum and plan out her schedule and, do work every day, attend classes and do work every day in order to keep up. And that was, the first semester was a bit of a struggle for that.
Wow, Laurie, you, I think, just so vividly illustrated what COVID was like, I think, for so many families. You just painted this word picture that was so vivid. Like, even just the couple challenges that she was facing initially with like the more unstructured journalism class and like honors Spanish. And that's actually when you said that, I was like, do they still teach languages like that? That's how I learned Spanish, was just like by rote for conjugations. But, in a normal circumstance with some time and some space to kind of navigate those challenges. And then with COVID hitting and essentially literally just taking everything off the table. And from what you've described, it's just like being plunged into this kind of pit of like, there's nothing here now and everything else is harder and everything that you love to do is gone. And you mentioned she shut down, and can you speak just a little bit about that as far as was it not just, but was it essentially her not wanting to talk about this stuff, feeling like those big feelings? And we know so many students had a lot of anger and honestly a lot of grief over what they were losing, right? It's really hard to process. I think most adults still haven't processed it all. That type of thing, or was it, kind of opting out of school aside from the bare minimum, like you said? Like, what was that shutdown? Was it just with school? Was it kind of all over, more holistic?
I think, initially she felt anger at us because we started restricting her and saying that she couldn't go out, during the beginning when we were all, so that was part of it. And then I also think that her teachers at the time were not all that, they weren't reaching out and saying, hey, are you okay? I noticed you didn't get this assignment in. They didn't seem to care. And so when teachers don't care, then students don't care. So, like I said, she shut herself in her room. She came out for meals. She didn't talk to us for several weeks at a stretch. It was pretty dark. We were quite concerned about her mental health during that period, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. And can I ask, Laurie, and you don't need to speak to this if we can move on, but was there any sort of did she see any sort of counselor? Was there any sort of therapeutic intervention at that time? Or was it like let's see where this goes and get an action plan in place?
I spoke to someone for myself to get some help because I couldn't convince Nicole to talk to anyone at that point. So I got some help on ways that I could make sure that she stayed safe. And that was about all that we did for her. She really
That's huge. Laurie, sorry, I just want to acknowledge that that's big that you advocated for yourself, like right there. I think that's that is fantastic.
It was the only thing that I could do, to help her. I didn't know how to help her to get out of this dark place. So that was really what I what, the solution that I came up with was to get somebody to help me to bring her back to, where we needed her to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And would you say kind of that then that recognition essentially of this is a bad situation, this is very unhealthy, not sustainable, into the transition to that new school? Because obviously what you said about the teachers and even just the lack of infrastructure, which a lot of schools had, there's no judgment here. A lot of schools obviously were so ill-equipped, right, to deal with this. Was that kind of part and parcel with changing that situation? Was she on board with that to change the situation? Like, do you feel like she recognized how bad it was?
She was not happy at all with the previous school. So yeah, she was ready to try something different. And so she was open to doing that and, worked through the application process with us willingly to make that change. Because she, I think she wasn't happy with what was happening at the old school. She, like I said, she felt that the teachers didn't really care. And she was kind of like, well, why should I care, Mom? It's just boring and dumb. And, yeah.
Well, it's tough, right? Because in a situation like kids are smart, you can't BS them being like, no, this and that. Like their BS meter is kind of tuned in a pretty big way. Okay, so that's huge. So you guys took huge action, just even in that sense, getting her into this new program, getting her into these new classes. Let's talk a bit about that.
So the next thing that we did, once we had her in the online program, then we were tasked with being her learning coach. And that was very difficult for us to make that transition. First, my husband tried to do that. And then I ended up taking over because he got frustrated because she was still, just not quite checked in. So we fought our way through the first semester of that program. We had help from her advisors. Nicole refused to advocate for herself, which was very frustrating for me as I was trying to help her get through this. In the second semester, we made a decision to align her with an academic coach, someone outside, someone other than me, to help her get through the second semester. And that person actually did a pretty good job of starting to help her learn about using a calendar to organize herself and get on a schedule. But what that person didn't do is, what that person did right was to introduce the calendar. What that person did not do that we finally got from Como was that person put the calendar together for Nicole and was basically, still just doing everything, doing the organizational part for her. So Nicole did not really understand how to do it herself, is what I realized when we got ready to start school again the following year.
Got it. So that's so interesting. So it also sounds like, just to keep Nicole's kind of perspective in mind, it sounds like she was quite open to wanting to learn how to succeed in this new environment with, like, it sounds like just way looser deadlines. And like you said, having to plan out the whole term, some challenges, got some support, introduced some tools. I always just smile when I hear the calendar because it's like magic. But of course, when you're using it right, and actually, Laurie, that's something that is so interesting. I want to pause there for a second because a lot of families, parents and students that we talk to, they'll be like, oh, I tried the calendar and it didn't work. And at this stage, just because I've been doing this for so long, I'm like, I can almost guarantee you it's because you didn't use it right. Like, you don't know if you're using it right, then it makes a difference and you're going to see a difference and want to use it. So for Nicole, it sounds like that kind of gap was the autonomy and the agency.
Yeah, and also the coach didn't really use a calendar like Google Calendar. She was using a spreadsheet, which just was not as clean and easy to manage as an actual, scheduling calendar solution that's designed for that. She had like a spreadsheet and, with weeks and, the classes and stuff lined up. So it just wasn't the right tool for Nicole. It didn't take. She looked at it when she was talking to this person, and she never looked at it when, it helped her to like get through the work, but she couldn't do it herself. She never managed to independently create a calendar of activities in the 3 or 4 months that she worked with this coach. She knew what she was supposed to do, but she never actually did it. And so the coach kept doing it for her.
Yeah, which just, so yeah, that integration
transferred. Yeah, I mean, what we realized at the end of that process was that Nicole had just transferred dependence on me and my husband to dependence on somebody else. And that wasn't really what we were looking for in terms of how we wanted to help her. She was not achieving the independence that we wanted to see.
And did you sense that or feel that she also saw that, or was she kind of in the camp of, no, this is okay because I have this person helping? Or did you get the sense that, or did she say that she wanted to learn how to do it on her own? Was that anything that you guys ever talked about?
I think she realized that it wasn't the kind of help that she needed, because there wasn't any, when I said we're not going to continue with this coach in the fall, it wasn't that she came back to me and said, oh, I want to continue with this coach. I need this coach. This is helping me a lot. It wasn't anything like that. So.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about then going into now senior year in this virtual program. Was this something before school went back where you were like, we need to get something in place here to help Nicole succeed more autonomously? Or was this like, did you give it those first few weeks of let's see how it goes when classes start back up?
No, we realized that we were going to have an even more complex situation with Nicole in the fall, because we knew that we had a move that was going to be coming up. We knew that she was going to be applying for colleges as well. So on top of everything else, and also things were opening up. So she wanted to go out and she wanted to get out and do things. So life was going to be more complicated again for all of us. And so we knew we had to do something to get her, on track. And also, I didn't want to have another year like the one I had where I felt like I was just dragging her through her courses and, forcing her to do work and nagging her all the time. And our relationship was just not great. She still was not really communicating with us and was spending most of her time in her room and wasn't really, all the teenage adolescent behaviors that we see when kids are kind of,
Totally. Yeah. And throwing school in there. And it's when you initially said my husband and I were meant to be the learning coaches. I think I actually made a bit of an odd face, because I'm just like, that is the nightmare of so many parents, because you're not a learning coach. And especially for teenagers, mom or dad is generally, not always, but generally the last person that they want to be, it just causes such a rift. It's such a point of tension so often.
Yeah. And, frankly, I don't remember high school algebra or calculus or whatever the heck she was doing. And there were some subjects where I could provide her with guidance, but there were other areas that I just would say, I don't know,
Yeah, I do 100%. So Laurie, how did you, what kind of support were you looking for? How did you find us? Kind of share how this all came together, how we met.
I watched some of the interviews like this one. I looked through your website, obviously, and then we spoke with an advisor who explained a little bit more about how the program worked, and that was how we came to Como.
Okay. And was Nicole on board from the get-go? Was she skeptical? Were you skeptical? Tell us a bit just about that initial coming into it. I won't take offense, by the way, Laurie. You can be totally candid.
No, I think the initial contact with Como and the advisor that we spoke to did a really good job of talking Nicole through what was going to happen. Initially, Nicole was like, "Oh, another one of these, coaches. What is this, Mom?" She was, I would say, skeptical about starting with somebody new or something new. But then after speaking with Como folks, with Nicole and some of the other folks at Como, and understanding what this program was about, I think she was willing to try. She knew that she needed something else too. She didn't want to go through another year like the one we had. So she knew as well as I did that I was not a good learning coach. And she had also said to me, I want to be more independent. So I knew that there was a desire to learn to be more independent and to manage her time better and And she articulated those things very well in the initial interview, that she wanted to learn to manage her time better, to not procrastinate as much, and to work more independently.
Yeah, she really did. She came in with a quite like just an awesome awareness of these are the things that I know are causing me trouble and are causing hardship, and these are the things that I want less of. And she was also quite, at least on our end, from what we saw, remember, she was quite open from day one. There was no, oh, I don't want to do this, or this won't work for me. It was just like, all right, I'll give this a go. And we just saw her trying things, and she was implementing them right, and they were sticking. And obviously there were some bumps, but overall, it just seemed like from the get-go, she was in it and she showed up ready to learn. And Laurie, from your perspective as mom, if you could kind of share, what did that look like from where you were sitting?
Yeah, I saw her, I saw the same thing. I saw her just, gaining, I would say the main thing that I saw with Nicole is that she gained the confidence that she could do it on her own. Just by using the tools that you provided to her and taking the guidance that you were giving to her every week, she became more and more confident, that she could get the work done independently. And so, yeah, it was really interesting to watch, like how quickly, I would say, she kind of set her plan out and started executing on that plan. And then, I would say, how's things going? It's good. I got it. And I would say, you have a plan? Yeah, I got a plan. I'm there. I got this. And there were bumps along the way and things that fell off the table every once in a while. But for most of the semester, up until the move, I would say, she was right on track. When the move came, I think that threw her for a little bit of a loop, as it would any of us. I think it threw me for a loop, frankly, with all the things going on. So she did fall behind a little bit at the end of the semester, but everything got done on time, and she passed. So far, she's still passing all her classes, doing quite well in all the classes that she's taking.
Which is so awesome. And Laurie, importantly, because I've got several follow-ups here, but number one, did you feel, because I remember towards the end of our time together, but how long did it take for you to feel like you could kind of step back? Like you didn't have to necessarily have that, really robust, involved, I have to be a learning coach. Did that happen? Was that very gradual? Did that kind of what was that like for you as far as that, I'm going to step back a little bit? Was that hard? Was it easy?
I wouldn't say it was easy. I don't know what the time frame was where I felt like I could truly relax and just let her go. I would say it was probably at least 6 weeks before I really felt like I could fully just let her go. And I will say that thanks to you, Kelsey, we did start we did a terms of agreement engagement meeting. Where instead of checking in with her frequently, we check in twice a week with her at a specific time. And, from a parent learning perspective, I would say if there was one thing that I took away from this that was most valuable to us was establishing that practice within our house. Because that meant, what that did, and I had never really even thought about this, is it meant that every other time that we were interacting with Nicole, when she came out of her room to have dinner or, do her laundry or whatever it was, anytime she came out of her room, she knew that we weren't going to ask her what was going on with school. And she understood that the only time we would really have serious conversations about what was happening with her schoolwork was during these specific set time periods. And that worked really well in when we talk about sort of mending the relationship with us and getting her to open up and talk to us, now she comes in and she'll tell me about something totally unrelated to school, and we'll just chat about it. So
that's huge.
Wasn't happening at all prior to that. So I know it sounds like a very simple thing, but if I could make a recommendation to all the parents out there, this idea of having fixed times, not frequently, few times a week, just to check in with your kid on how schoolwork is doing, and leave it The rest of the time, just leave it alone, because the Como process itself will take care of the rest of the, keeping them on track and making them accountable to get the work done for themselves.
That's such an awesome insight, Laurie. I was actually going to ask you about that a bit later, because we hadn't always, this was something that we've done with certain families. Now it's a part of, like, every family is doing it, because we've seen that it can actually have such a huge difference for most families. But I love that you pulled that out. And regardless, if you end up booking a call and working with us, amazing. If you don't, what Laurie said still stands. Like, having this conversation where your kid establishes, like, twice or 3 times a week, 30 to 40 minutes, and you guys decide what you're going to talk about in school. And Laurie said everything that needs to be said about it. I would just say, give it a go, try it for a few weeks, and I think you'll find and learn so much. There's tremendous advantages for students and parents that generally really help with, I think, use the word mend, Laurie, which I love. I'm going to borrow that, mend some family dynamics. That's Laurie, that's awesome. And how about as far as with Nicole, from what you saw with her, what would you say was like the, number one or top 2 things for her learning journey, her skill building? You mentioned the confidence piece. What else?
So I think self-advocacy was another area that I saw a tremendous amount of growth in. Prior to this, if there was a problem with a class, or, with a, let's say a teacher recorded a grade incorrectly, or Nicole didn't understand something in the work that she was doing, she would come to me and she would say, "Mom, can you help me figure this out?" Or, "Can you, send a note to the teacher because I think she did this wrong," or whatever. What she learned going through with Como was that she could do it herself. And she started to do it herself. And I also learned that I should just say no. I should, when she would ask me, "How do I do this?" I would say, "I'm not taking that class, and I don't know the answer to that. I think you need to contact your teacher or your advisor or whoever." And I would not write the email. I would refuse to write the email for her. I would refuse to advocate for her. She's 16 and a half years old. This is a skill that is, I realized was critical to her success, to be able to advocate for herself. So I just started to say no, and I continue to say no. She tests me still now. She'll come to me and say, "Mom, I can't log into the XYZ site." And I'll say, "Well, I think you better send an email to the IT team and ask them to help you, because I don't know how to get you in. If you forgot your password and you can't reset it, I'm not going to be able to fix that. So send them an email. I'm sure they'll help you." So there was
Laura, just like
that.
I bow down to you.
There was a ton of that going on, and we're still working on that. But yeah.
That's huge. And I need to very explicitly here, like, tip my hat to you, because we do parent calls as a part of the program. And Laurie, that's something that I think a lot of parents struggle with. You made it look easy. I don't know if it was or not, but it came off with, you had just such intellectual humility of like, "Hey, here's a problem I'm having. What can I do? What are best practices?" And a lot of parents, for some reason, and I don't have a teenager yet, a lot of parents feel like they need to know it all, like they need to have the answers. And like a huge part of this is like, you're meant to be modeling lifelong learning, like for our kids, and helping them understand resourcefulness and all these other things. And you took some of that advice and I think you were doing some of it already, but really doubled down and implemented it in such an awesome way.
I think also part of it for parents is, we're at the same time our kids are making a transition, Kelsey, we're also making a transition. And some of us, including myself, we don't make it as soon as we need to. And that transition is when your kid is little, when your kid is 4, 5, 6, elementary school age, little, they need help with everything. So when they come to you, your immediate response is, "Yeah, let me help you tie your shoe," whatever it is. And you want to help. It's your, as a parent, as a mom, as a dad, you want to help your kid when they're struggling with things. And when they're little, that's okay. But at some point, I think we forget that we need to make that transition to allowing them to figure it out themselves. And I think for me, that's a transition that I've been through in the last 6 months or so. It's just like saying, "Okay, does she really need my help? Or is this something she can figure out herself?" And stopping before I jump in, as soon as she asks for help, to help her, I think about how I can best help her. Is it by actually doing something for her or by encouraging her to help herself? Because they can do that when they get to this age, right?
Absolutely. And that's something we see kind of like clockwork. Like if a student, if a parent expects this, a lot of students will come up here. If they expect this, lo and behold, with the right tools and support, that student will rise to meet it. And it's not always, and it's definitely your role as parent is obviously still critical. You're going to be there for your kid when they need you. But what you've just outlined, I think, is such a great illustration of you're covering both bases. You're encouraging them to stand on their own 2 feet. You're letting them know they're not going to fall, right? You're still there for the stuff that matters that they can't do. But I love your example of the, I'm not IT. Like, what can we do here? What can we do to solve this problem?
And for me also, I think reminding myself that if I didn't, in every situation, if I didn't help, there would be, and it was something that she could do on her own, there would be natural consequences. And I just had to accept the fact that, okay, maybe she will fail, fail a test or fail a quiz or whatever. It wouldn't be the end of the world. She wouldn't end up out on the street. She would recover, and she, just had to let it play itself out. She would either step up to it or she might fail, but that either outcome was okay.
So Laurie, I've got to ask you, because this is something another parent actually used the word catastrophizing, which I'm going to borrow, that a lot of parents can catastrophize, right, and go down this, and then they're going to end up on the streets. And it's like this, this thing. And failure, watching your kids struggle, watching them potentially fail, thinking that they could fail, especially, a lot of families are in competitive environments with colleges, with all of these things where grades are important. It's their junior, senior year, all these things. Any advice on how to kind of arrive at that mindset and perspective of, if they fail, they will be okay still. It's not going to be the end of the world. And if they don't, they don't. But how did you get there? Like, for a parent who's not there yet, what would you tell them?
I would say, I guess, you have to believe in your kid. You have to believe in the foundation that you've given to your kid through all of these years. This isn't like you just started, this kid just started developing from, today. And I guess, just trusting and believing in your kid. I don't know how else. And I am a classic catastrophizer. That's a word. But I'm a planner, and I always look 10 steps ahead. What could this is what's going to happen, and especially when Nicole was just sort of shut down, then I was like, oh my God, the world is going to end. We're never going to, she's never graduating. She's never going to college. She's never, I don't know how we're going to get out of this hole. It felt like, for us too, for my husband and I. We both had to just resist the urge to look in that direction and just trust that what we were doing for her and the supports that we were giving her were the right things, and just trust the process. And especially when we got into this program, that was my mantra through the whole thing. I'm just going to sit back and trust this process and just let it go. Even if it doesn't feel like she is going in the right direction, or I'm worried that she's not going to get the work done, I just held myself back, and just kept, I think the parent calls helped with that as well, to just reassure me that we're going to get there. She's going to get over this hump. She's going to pick this up. But, that was a very long 6 weeks to get to that point.
Yeah, fair. And ultimately, worth it though, in the end, to get there, to go through that hardship and then to be on the other side of it.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
And importantly, let's just go ahead and finish this train of thought, because you guys, before we hit record, Laurie told me just the most amazing news. Nicole was also doing her, finishing up her applications back in the fall. And what was the news that she recently got, Laurie? Where is she
got
going?
Accepted early decision to her first choice college. So she's off to college next fall. As I said to Kelsey, assuming we don't get a terrible case of senioritis, and here we go, catastrophizing again. But she only has 6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks left of school, her senior year, and hopefully I am confident that we will come out the other side.
I feel that. I feel it 100%. I share that energy and I see it and I put it out there. And it is that's so exciting. First of all, just early decision to your first choice. Like, I mean, and she so deserves it, obviously. But I also just want to kind of zoom out here. And again, for parents, especially if you are in the thick of the suck, of the struggle, of the, oh my God, how are we going to get out of this? Laurie, I think that your story is so inspiring. And I think it's like, real powerful firsthand testimony of you can go from being in that where it's awful and hard and you're seeking support for what can we do to this celebration and like there's this beautiful light and this thing is unfolding right in this amazing way. It's just so Laurie, thank you for sharing. And I have to ask also, because I'd be remiss not to, and you actually preempted quite a few of my questions. So like you're an excellent storyteller. Laurie, in light of everything that we shared, for parents, for students who are stuck, struggling, wondering what can we do to make things better, what is your ultimate advice? You've talked about surrendering, about trusting the process, trusting yourself and the foundation. Any other things that you would say to parents who are kind of, possibly in your situation 6 months ago?
I would say don't give up on your kid. As I said before, you raised a good kid. It's not you're a good parent, and you've raised a good kid. And whatever you've done for them up to this point, and whatever you do going forward, just keep reminding yourself it's enough because you're doing the best you can. Just keep on supporting them and loving them, and it will work itself out. Because your heart is in the right place, and I guess that's about it.
Laurie, I'm gonna clip that and just send it out and broadcast it out to like everyone we know.
You just got to remember. I mean, we're all sort of. There's no manual for raising kids in this time of COVID, and with all of the things that are going on that we talked about earlier in this interview. People will give you advice from all different directions about what you should and shouldn't do with regard to electronics or this or that, or, bedtimes, quarantines, not quarantines, isolating, letting them go out, don't let them go out, is very confusing. And you just need to do what you feel is right for your kid. And it's not going to be the same as what anyone else is doing for their kid. And you can hear in my story that our path was very unique and very different. And we made decisions that were completely different from everybody else that was around us. And maybe they thought we were crazy, but it was the right thing to do for her. And as I said, she's coming out of the other side, more confident, more capable, and ready to go off to college and, be a grown-up soon, hopefully.
Conquer the world, Laurie, conquer the world in college.
Well, you know her, so yeah, maybe.
That is, I think, some of the best advice I've ever heard anybody give. It's so heartfelt, and I think it's so true. And I really am going to be broadcasting that clip because I think every parent should hear it. Laurie, thank you again for coming on, for sharing your incredible story. I'm feeling so energized after this conversation. I really appreciate it. For everybody watching, if you have questions, you want to learn more, you want help, you want to write your own story, book a call. We'll drop the link below. And in the meantime, we will catch you on our next interview. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Kelsey. Bye.